Religious leaders have been calling for calm and peaceful demonstrations. With us now is Pastor Jeremy Williams. He is of the Phillips Metropolitan Church in Hartford's North End. And Pastor Williams, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you, Dennis, for having me.
When you and I were chatting in person a couple of months ago at an event in the city's North End, you had told me that you moved up from the South. And so I want to get your perspective of what the South is like, racially speaking, compared to Connecticut.
Oh, well, I mentioned that I'm from Huntsville, Alabama, Rocket City, USA. And so I spent a large amount of my adult career here in New England. So I grew up in Alabama, and I went to college in Vanderbilt. I call that moving north. And then when I did graduate school, and I'm doing PhD work at Harvard now. So I spent most of my adult career here in the New England. And what's really interesting to see is how race tends to manifest in ways that are eerily similar, but then also surprisingly different. And that has been a hallmark of whether I was in Connecticut or Massachusetts, or even in between Alabama and Tennessee. I think that one thing about America is that it has not dealt with the race issue. And so to that end, whether we are in the South or in the North, we can see it, whether it's in the South where people are not receiving education that they should receive based on zip codes or healthcare inadequacies because of the way that funding happens, or whether it's in New England where literally in a state like Connecticut that cities are really regionalism doesn't really exist. So like the urban areas are forced to really have to fend for themselves, your Hartford, your Bridgeports, your New Havens. And so race just has different ways that it maps out, but it's very American.
You know, Pastor, you are a pillar of strength to your community, to your congregants, but you haven't been able to really see them in a group because of the COVID-19 crisis. But I know you're talking to them. What are they telling you about what they are seeing on television in terms of what happened in Minneapolis and the protests?
Well, actually, in line with that, I just got done conducting a virtual Bible study where I actually was conducting it mobile, where we were a part of the demonstration hosted by the YMCA and others. And I was able to engage with my members virtually, which is the way that we're conducting worship and the way that we're able to stay connected. And one thing that has been really, really a part of people's concern is a fear that some of the, especially for my older members, the challenges of a racial past that they thought we had gotten over, we have not, and they are as present and as alive for their children and grandchildren. And that leads to a lot of anxiety because people don't want their children or grandchildren to grow up in that kind of world. And so it's important that we use our voices to make sure that that's not the world that we leave or that they inherit.
You know, there is no easy answer to some of the questions that we're going to be having during these difficult conversations about race relations. But where do we begin here in Connecticut to try to make things better and more equitable?
I think you broke up a bit when you asked the last question, so if you could say it again, please.
Sure. Where do we begin in terms of trying to improve race relations, make things more equitable here in Connecticut?
That's a really good question.
And it's difficult to answer, I know.
There are a number of places where we... Yeah, it is. But there's a litany of places. Some of the work that I do in Bridgeport as the board chair for Faith Acts for Education is try to make sure that we create a space where children have a quality education so that they can become positive citizens. We are people of faith, built and empowered to get our children the education they deserve. So education in the state of Connecticut and working on the funding formula is extremely a part, getting educational equity, as well as what we see there's challenges with police brutality. So we need to make sure that the police are not operating in ways that without being advised. We need to handle healthcare inaccessibility, which is why we were able here at our church to do COVID-19 testing two days, and we're able to test over 600 people. We have to address these gaping inequalities, especially like where my church is that I serve now. It's in the Promise Zone, and we know that it sees some of the harshest disparities in the state. And so one of the best places that we can start is to provide resources to those communities that have been left behind, not because they have chosen to be left behind, because they have intentionally and systematically been underfunded, been under-resourced, and it's imperative for us to look at those places and help to do the best we can so they can have access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
You know, Pastor, the COVID-19 crisis has been hitting the African-American community particularly hard. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that it's because it's a symptom of, can you see me? Oh, is it?
Yeah, I can see you.
It blanked out for a. Oh, it's because it's a symptom of the same root cause that I believe is why people are protesting and why there are challenges to this police brutality, is that race has a way of infecting people's, not only their social lives but their physical lives, literally. Whether it's because in the neighborhood where I serve, there is no grocery store people can get fresh produce, that leads to health challenges, which already, if we look at a number of different disease categories, African Americans, Black and brown people are often the ones who face the brunt of these diseases because of access to healthcare, because of being in food deserts. And so these issues are central if we want to help to increase people's lifespan. So what I believe COVID-19 has done is not create just new problems, but it's exacerbated systems and problems that already were in place. And that's what I believe some of these protests are really trying to highlight.
And very briefly, when does your church reopen to the public?
Well, we're still in the plans of reopening conversations.
Good enough. All right.
So we'll let everybody know as soon as we're opened up.
All right. Pastor Jeremy Williams from Phillips Metropolitan Church in Hartford, we thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Dennis. Bye.
You're welcome. Thanks for being with us. And thank you for watching Face the State. We leave you with some sights and sounds of our beautiful state capital in your capital city of Hartford, Connecticut. Have a great Sunday, everybody.